What's up, YouTube? This will be a game that I've played during my ChatGPT experiment on my main channel, where I let ChatGPT decide what I'm gonna do. And the reason I'm showing this replay to you right now, a little bit more in-depth, is because I've had somebody say in the comments that they want to see me defend the Glaive build and how to do it. And I thought this was the perfect game for it because I've played it against Maxpax, who is probably one of the best Glaive players. And I don't think I took any damage here, so this is the perfect game to show you guys where you can just copy the early game and see how I move my units exactly. So as I said, this was a ChatGPT game, which meant that I had to play Muta no matter what. Usually against Glaives, you should not play Muta as a follow-up, even if you defend them perfectly. But in this game, I kind of had to, so take the follow-up to my defense with a grain of salt. But other than that, even my gas timings and everything afterwards, until the point where I put down a Spire, was very much so what I would usually do against Glaives. And since I beat one of the best Glaives players with it, it should also work for you guys in your league. So yeah, I open with a normal hatch gas pool. If you get blocked, you just go 17 hatch on the third base, followed up by, once again, the normal 18 gas, 17 pool. On this map, the third base is actually very close by, so you can even go for a 16 pool. If you leave the main base at around 34 seconds, maybe 35, you can get a clean 16 hatch, and it won't slow you down too much. I usually do 17 hatch on every map. This is the first one where I'm actually going to consider going 16 hatch because it might be more efficient. I still have to try that out. I didn't test it yet. So then he started harassing my workers. The second overlord I leave above my natural to check if there's a cannon rush. Sometimes they will go scout and then cannon rush with an extra probe. If they cannon rush, you can pull a couple of probes to force him to completely wall off the cannon. If he doesn't, you can just kill it. And if he does wall off the cannon, then you can just take your natural and you're ahead, since the cannons are not actually blocking any drone movement between your then main base and then new natural. So all you need to do is make sure you have an overlord there, because if he cannon rushes for free and gets a pylon and the cannon up, right as your hatchery finishes, you will lose the hatchery and then you're actually quite far behind. So it's important not to do that. Now, since I'm playing against Maxpax, I know he usually goes back with his probe, so I sometimes cut the second pair of links. Most of the time, I think you guys should make 4 zerglings though, if you get blocked. This is just me playing against an opponent. I saw that he went for a straight up warp gate, so the extra drone that I made instead of the zergling, I decided to mine gas early on. This will help me later on in the defense with building more roaches early on. It's important to not forget to pull your drones back into gas, because you only mine off of 1 gas and you need to make a specific amount of roaches to defend the push. So here he shades. He actually does end up getting 0 zerglings, but gets a hit on. I lose a little bit of mining time. Always make the extra overlord here as the larva spawns first in the main base. And always try to saturate your third base first, since your main base already is saturated, so you always want to give the larva priority that spawn at your third base. If you don't know this kind of stuff, I made an advanced early game guide against Protoss, which says all this kind of stuff. So I think I forgot a queen here in the main base. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, yeah, it looks like... So this queen is definitely too late. It should have started right after the overlord that I started in my main base, around 36 to 38. I made that one a little bit too late, but I'm also blind countering the fact that it can't be an early Stargate. If you see your opponent goes for an early warp gate, you can delay this queen for extra drones. It doesn't matter because your second queen should still be out for the Oracle, but I overdid it a little bit here because I knew, okay, I'm playing against Maxpax, it will be DT drop or Glaives if he starts the warp gate right away. I would suggest you still get this queen slightly earlier in the actual game. So now he goes... I saw the extra warpins, I see it's extra adepts. I don't need to make a spore. If you see the war prism move out together with the adepts at this point, I would make a spore in the natural and then one at the third base. If they do go DTs, though, they can't have 6 adepts that early on. So at this point, I do not need the actual spore crawlers. Now I pull all my queens forward. Besides 1 queen in the main base, I also make a spore. It could still be just 6 adepts into DTs. But then the DT would have to walk, so I'm getting a spore at the natural, 1 at the third base. Make sure to always move all of your queens to the front to deflect the adepts as far away as possible, so he can't shade in as far. It will make the defense a lot easier. It will also protect your creep spread. Sometimes you can even push your creep a little bit further forward. Here I cancel a spore since I see the additional adepts. It's very unlikely now that it's CTs. And you just follow the shade with most of your units. It's important that if you play against Glaives, you always want to follow the shade with as many units as necessary. If you have to decide, if you don't have enough units, make sure that more of them follow the shade. Because if they actually shade in, and you're underprepared, they win the fight there, they start killing drones, you need to start moving your drones, and then the warpin starts on the other side as well. That's always where disaster strikes. So it's better to not have enough at the front, because that will end up being just, you know, defending a single spot still. So now we're droning up. I usually start a second gas in my main base as the attack is still going on, in order to get a relatively early lair. The lair is mostly important for roach speed, so he can't shoot me infinitely with the Raptor balls when he goes to Raptor Adept. That's what the early lair is for. And then I just tried to go to 6 gas and 66 drones. I scouted that he had a relatively early third base, so I knew, okay, this is most likely not going to be an all-in, because all-in would be immortal production, and 6 gets usually before the third base. So with the defense that I've had in the early game, I was completely fine here to drone up to 66 with the information that I've had. Now, the way I split my units is in 3 different control groups. A bunch of Zerglings mostly under the War Prism. The Roaches are not the perfect defense against the Adepts, because they can simply drop in and kill a couple of units before the Roaches kill them, a couple of drones. And you don't really want to have that happen, so your main base defense against the War Prism should be Ling heavy. And then the other bases I'm defending mostly with Roaches. And at this point it's important to try to push forward the creep. And the normal follow-up will be Ravagerling Bane. Ravagerling Bane is very strong, especially if there's no Oracles, against pretty much all ground compositions. But since I had to go Muta, I decided to go for a Spire here. I'm making units right now because you don't take a very early fourth base whenever you're playing against Glaives. You simply can't, since there's still Adepts in front of your base. So you are forced to be on 66 drones for a while. Anything else would be not very efficient. So what I do here is I make a lot of units on 66 drones, which is completely fine. And then I also counterattack if my opponent moves out, which is the case here. I force a warpin on his side, and then I'll go back with these Zerglings and try to come in for a surround. At the same time, I see that there is an Adept counterattack, so I quickly ult a couple of units from my main hotkey to defend the Adepts together with the Queens, and then I try to engage here while splitting a little bit against the actual incoming attack, surrounding it and pouncing on it. Very important to clean it up nicely. And at this point, we pretty much won the game. If you played anything other than Muta, you can just max out and aim off pretty much. Now, if you're below Diamond, or especially if you're below Platinum, I wouldn't suggest going for Baneling based armies against Protoss, because you have to move command them during every single fight, and that's kind of complicated. So it's better to go for some Roach Ravager based composition. You can go Roach Ravager Hydra, or you can go into Lurkers. You can go basically just for big units that have a lot of HP. That type of stuff is very important and just easier to control. In this game, I did go for Mutas, which honestly was fine in the scenario that I was in, because of how well we defended the incoming attack. There we have enough Mutas together to kill the War Prism. If there's a War Prism on your side of the map, do not show him that you have Mutas unless you have enough of them to kill the War Prism before you can recall. That should be around like 12 or so, so don't do it before that, unless you think you can surprise him while he's not watching. A very strong move is also to just defend the War Prism with the units that you have at home if the Mutas are still a secret, and then go across with them. So at this point he saw it obviously because of the War Prism scout, but the War Prism probably also lost 2 Disruptors in there, which means he doesn't have that many units to defend, and this is also a nice fight. At this point we just want to trade evenly, remember. We have an army advantage, so I want to force a bunch of Stalkers towards his main base at first, and then pounce with everything at his fourth base. My plan is to kill his fourth base at this point. So we go in. There is an overcharge. I probably should have focus fired that with 1 volley of the Mutalisk. I did that a little bit late, but we simply have such an army advantage that we can bully his army away while half of our army is still just fighting the Nexus and killing it slowly. As you can see, we're still maxed at this point. And if you're playing Muta against pure ground, you can just keep making Mutas over and over. You can go mass Muta because Mutas actually scale pretty well against Stalkers. Here I actually realized that I forgot my air upgrade, so that's a little bit sketchy. If you have 0/0 Mutas against, let's say, +3 3 Stalkers, they don't scale that well after all, but obviously my opponent is only on a single Forge, since he opened with a quite a committed opener. And invested heavily into tech as well, you have to say, together with the Robobay. So the way you finish this is, yeah, you just try to find trades that are somewhat even. When you have even Muta numbers for Stalkers, you don't really want to fight, but if you have more Mutas than he has Stalkers, you can try to take a trade here and there. And one thing you might also notice is then that whenever I'm behind enemy lines, one thing that I do with the Mutas is I add them to my main control group instead of my Muta control group, so they don't fly above his bases without me noticing it, and then I might lose a bunch of my reinforcements that way. So instead I hotkey them with my main army control group. Now once I rejoin all my Mutas together, I simply alt them away from my main army control group. At this point I'm maxed, so I do want to trade. I'm not showing him that my ground army is here yet. See, this way I force the blink forward, and now I can engage together with the Zerglings. At this point it's probably worth it to kill the Colossus, since they're exposed, and they also deal a lot of damage to my Zerglings, which Zerglings in general are, even though they're not that well upgraded, they still tank a lot of the shots of the Stalkers. They make it so the Muta simply will deal more damage since the Stalkers have something else to shoot at. And I'm still just producing Mutas and Zerglings, which should be good enough. Since we are up to 10 gas at this point, even 6 bases. My drone count is not very high, so I think if you play against ground and you go Muta, you do want the drone count to be at least 80. But I figured I'm far enough ahead that his only way is actually maxing out. And even then, even if your opponent maxes out, it's not that bad. You can just mass Banelings and then remax. If you have a lot of drones, but I wanted to not to risk it, I just wanted to max out and trade because I felt like I was far enough ahead. And here, once again, he blinks forward, and he simply doesn't have that many Stalkers because he's not mining enough. As you can see, the Mutas are trading somewhat effectively. I think this is about an even trade. It doesn't look that pretty, but it doesn't have to be because we have way more income than our opponent, which in the end was good enough for ChatGPT to beat Maxpax, surprisingly enough. As you could see there, we're even ahead in resources lost, but a lot of it has to do with the early game, of course. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.